Good afternoon and welcome to the Vale of Glamorgan Council's Cabinet meeting on the 15th of January 2026. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. As usual, we'll be using the Council's hybrid platform, and the meeting's being live streamed and recorded and will be uploaded to the Vale of Glamorgan Council's website as soon as practicable after the meeting. To avoid any background noise or feedback, participants, whether in the chamber or joining online, should ensure their microphone isn't activated when not speaking. Those online and wishing to speak should raise their digital hand, and those in the chamber can raise their real hand. We don't use the chat function. It's just to highlight any technical issues. Or to attract the attention of democratic service officers. It's important that any discussion or debate actually takes place within the meeting. So without further ado, we can move on to the agenda proper. The first item is apologies for absence. I'm aware that we've got either everyone in the meeting or online, so that's okay. Then agenda item 2, to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interests. I haven't been notified of any. I'm not aware of any.
No, none received for this meeting. Thank you.
It's not a deliberate error. We don't have any minutes for this meeting because we had a meeting last week and they're not ready as yet. So we're on to agenda item 3, and that's the initial budget 2026-27 and the medium-term financial plan from 26-27 through to 2030-31. And it's been a long time getting here, hasn't it? It's been all-consuming since sort of late spring. 2025 to get to here. So and I think it's fair to say that it's been the usual roller coaster with a stream of announcements from UK and Welsh government across the summer and autumn, where we've had to keep rejigging numbers and bringing it forward, discussing it with scrutiny, etc., bringing it to cabinet. But I think it's fair to say that we agreed back, I think it was about July last year, financial strategy, and we've kept to our guiding principles through that process, with the focus on firstly delivering the council's plan, Vale 2030, protecting our services that support our most vulnerable, and also to our schools, and sticking to that financial strategy. We continue to experience significant financial pressures, and these are mostly due to sort of rising demand and costs, and are predominantly in the area of schools, ALN, school transport, social care. And in social care, it's both adults and children's services. When we reported back in December, we were facing about a 10 million gap, but there's been hugely positive news since then that enables us to put the council on a more sound and sustainable footing. And the council has lobbied extensively alongside other Welsh counties on the provisional settlement. And I at this point, I do have to say huge thanks to colleagues in local authorities of all political persuasions across Wales, whether that be, Labour, Plaid Cymru, Liberal Democrat or Independent, in fact, where there has been a hugely concerted effort to argue and lobby for the value of local government and the extent of services that are delivered by the sector. So there was an announcement on the 9th of December, and our settlement then went up to 4.3%, which actually is an improvement of 4.6 million, which has made quite a sizable difference. There's also a few other things where there's been adjustment on our pension scheme, so that there was some funding added into the mix from there. So in effect, we are able to bring forward a proposal for a 5.5% council tax, which enables the council to invest more in a number of services. And I think that that's important to know, because since austerity kicked in back in, sort of early 2010s, investment is something that has been very rare. The focus has mainly been on how we manage to continue to deliver statutory services. And this, for the first time that I can remember since then, has been when we have been able to think about things not only that we would want to invest in, but actually things that residents of the Vale are saying that they want us to invest in. So we're also looking at having a reshaping and savings programme of about 2.7 million. So that will actually help us to save some stuff by doing things differently. And we've been very successful in doing that further. But the things that people will see if this budget is agreed is further investment in the public realm. Because quite often I think it's fair to say that people said, well, we want more reactive services, or we think that things need a bit of a spruce up, or maybe there needs to be some planting or something. That hasn't been possible in the times of severe austerity, but we are looking forward to doing more in that. There's a further 1 million for schools as we continue to work closely with them to address deficits. And I think it's worth saying that the Vale Council has the 5th lowest council tax of all Welsh counties, and it's significantly below the national average. And even if we go with a 5.5% increase, it's quite possible that we will slip a place and we will become the 4th lowest, looking at what is coming forward from other local authorities. But when you look at that there is an issue over at what point do funds become too low to provide the level of services we want. We've already seen, if you have a look in the report, that we, for most of our services, are either low or very low in terms of our expenditure on services. Now, in some ways that is because we are cost effective, but in other ways I would question, because there are things that we want to do in those service areas that we cannot do because of cost. So I would want to see that change this year. If you have a look through the report, just need to go into some of the pages. There are some really interesting tables in here, and if you look at expenditure on page 6 as net expenditure, it talks about what we spend our money on. There's been a lot of talk these days about parks, country parks, etc. But actually, if you look at the whole area that does planning, regeneration, tourism and country parks, that is it's less than 1% of our total budget. It actually talks at the bottom of page 7. That's the benchmarking, and you can see where we are in terms of what other local authorities spend on their services. But I think that what we are saying, if I can get back to the right page, it's easy to find, is actually in the executive summary on the bottom of page 3, what this budget will achieve is over £8.5 million more into education, more than £7.5 million into social services, and is nearly £6.5 million additional into other services. we will have a lot more discussion about what that means when we take this to scrutiny and we're able to discuss and debate it. But what I will say in drawing to a close is that we always talk in terms of percentages, but actually, as I said, because we're a lot lower than other local authorities, a 5.5% increase for us is a lot lower than 5.5% on most other authorities. So what it actually means is you in a band B, we always band D property, and we always use that as a marker. That would be slightly under, it would be £90.99p a year for a band D to actually deliver all of this. That works out at £1.75 a week. But as I said, we actually want to go a bit further, and this is what we want to talk to residents about in the consultation over the coming weeks. There are some key areas that people have told us that they want to see greater investment. And so we want to ask people if they'd be prepared to add an extra 31p a week on a band D property. And that 31p a week would cause an increase in youth services, more proactive and preventative services. Our youth services, a lot of them aren't statutory, have been stripped out over the years. And we know that our young people need that support. And so we will be talking to people across the Vale. We want to hear people's views. Is it worth an extra 31p a week to support our young people effectively with about £300,000 of additional investment? We know that in some of our more rural communities, the bus services are not sustainable. We will move to a franchise model at the end of this decade, but actually we want to invest a further £500,000 to ensure that we have better connections and better services. And there may be some other tweaks, but predominantly in the rural Vale, where under the new Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, it is showing that some areas are actually the most deprived in Wales in terms of their transport, their public transport facilities. So we think that we can't cut people who can't drive adrift. We want to invest in that. And finally, we know that people miss green flag parks. We know it was something we had to do through austerity. We needed to rationalise funding, but we know people want them back. And so we want to have some investment and reinstate those works contributing to the green flag status. We'll talk about that a lot more, but actually what we are saying is 5.5%, but we will be asking people whether or not that 31p, an extra 1%, is worth it for those specific services. So as I said, it's going to go to scrutiny. There's a big consultation, and please everybody contribute to that. I know that the Cabinet will be out and about talking to people. I think I'm virtually going to every school now, so that will be really good to listen to what the young people have to say. And then we'll come back to Cabinet to discuss the findings of all of that before it goes on to full council. So there are 5 recommendations on this at the moment. And firstly, that Cabinet notes the Council's updated financial position as set out in this report. Secondly, that Cabinet considers and approves the revised funding and spend assumptions along with the draft reshaping and saving proposals and refers this report and appendices to the Performance Joint Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of February 2026 for their consideration and debate, with members' views being referred back to Cabinet on the 26th of February this year. That Cabinet approves the budget, including reshaping and savings proposals as described in the body of this report, and appendices to be published as the basis for consultation as described in the body of the report. Lots of bodies of reports on that. For that, Cabinet approves the fees and charges detailed in Appendix D for consultation. And finally, that Cabinet notes the underlying level of financial pressures not included in the proposals. And I'd move. Oh, sorry, I shall go there and say, Councillor Birch, you wanted to come in with some comments.
Thank you. Well, apart from wishing to second this, I'd like to say how pleased I am that we are not going to have to make all of the proposed cuts that we were looking at in the Education Department. And I'm particularly pleased that we want to invest in youth services. They are so important. You know, people think about young people and criticise them for sitting in their bedroom staring at screens. It is up to us to be providing them with other things that they could be doing. Warm, safe places for them to meet, other educational opportunities, and for children who are not particularly interested in academia, you know, providing them with sports facilities and other people to talk to, other, you know, young adults to talk to who can show them perhaps different ways of succeeding in life. And youth work is so important. I mean, the police in particular are always very keen to see proper youth provision, because it not just the phrases keeps them off the streets, but it provides them with proper alternative things to do rather than staring at the television or a screen or possibly getting up to mischief. So I think that, I'm very, very pleased to see the emphases that we're going to be putting on youth services and education in particular.
Thank you, and thank you for seconding it. You beat the deputy leader to it. I can see that Councillor Wilson's got his hand up as well.
Yeah, can I just make a few points? Obviously, this budget has two parts in some ways. Although we are proposing a council tax increase, nevertheless, if we decide to do other things, and as Councillor Birch rightly said about youth provision and increasing that, but also if we're looking at our green flags in our parks, for example, which I am responsible for, clearly that's something that a lot of people are very proud of our parks, and I think people would like to see the accreditation back. But obviously this is open to consultation. And if you look on the page 27 on 2.90 on the report on table 13, there is a timetable there. And that timetable basically starts tomorrow in terms of looking at community and partners, including trade unions and the PSB, on the consultation of pay proposals. And that will go on to the 13th of February. So as you can see, there's a month of consultation there. And I think, as the leader rightly said, it's important that we as cabinet members go out, seek the views of our communities, find out what they feel about what we are doing, underline the fact that an awful lot of things that we do are statutory as well, like education and social services. But there are areas of discretionary expenditure we can look at. And I think clearly that's where I think we need to move forward on, because I think this budget is a budget for growth. We've had austerity, but I think this one, given the fact we've had above inflation settlement from Welsh Government, is really quite key. But we really want to listen to the public as to what their wants and what their needs are, and not just listen to the people that are very vocal on social media, but everyone else as well. And I think that is important, to get around our communities and to listen to them. So I'm happy to endorse this.
Thanks, Mark. And I can see that I have Councillor Eddie Williams here as well.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, clearly when you're talking about budgets, the social services is a big outlay. And it's just a recognition that when you look at the budgets and the way they put, often people say, what does the council do? well, it commissions quite a bit of the services that we provide. And when you talk about social services budget, 70% of that actually goes out to external providers. One of the good things about this report, and I know it's lengthy, there's sort of 70 odd pages of it, but the point that if you start looking through the report itself and also the appendices, you'll see the variety of things that we do. Often people think that we just deal with a particular aspect, such as older people or care homes, but when you look at other things that we do, families first, benefits families, there's a whole raft of things that are in this report that for those that uninitiated, it was enlightening when you start seeing what we're proposing. Yes, and I agree that we've spent, there's a lot of pressures, but within the report, it talks about service transformation, and we're making changes where we can. And we've got a few projects on the horizon that we know are going to make a difference. So hopefully people will support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, I mean, you talked about social care, and I mean, we all know that it wasn't that long ago that there was lots of talk about, if somebody went into hospital, how long it took for them to be discharged and get to home. And through investment in your service and a very innovative approach from our officers, we've actually turned that around, and there are people being discharged from hospital within 24 hours of being viewed as being fit. A much better quality of life, and with much greater outcomes. So there are so many things, and in terms of number of services, the last I heard is that local authorities in Wales deliver, depending on local authority, between 6,000 and 7,000 services each. The range of services that you would not be delivered by anyone else. There's a lot of services, if they failed, people would just be cut adrift. So I'm a total advocate of public services. So, as I said, I've got that. I've moved it. It's been seconded by Councillor Birch. I haven't got any more hands up, and everyone seems in agreement. So that's passed. Thank you. So we can move on to the other half of the budget that we have to deal with, and that is the draft capital programme, and this is from 2026-27 right through to 2030-31. It's interesting that the cabinet the capital programme for next year is 129 million. I mean, that's a phenomenal amount. I think if you look at it in terms of what we're spending our money on, I think Councillor Perks has pinched most of it, because her budget is in terms of housing 42 million, but there's this over 30 million in terms of learning and skills. And as we know, I mean, since 2012 we've delivered 18 schools. We've got 3 more in the programme now, but it's a whole range of different skills. In fact, if you add it up over the 5 years that we're talking about, the programme's just over 541 million. Really, really huge. So there is a long list of schemes, and you will find those in the appendices. I'm sure we'll be going through all of those with a fine-tooth comb at scrutiny. The councils, the amount awarded from the Welsh Government was 7.739 million. So that was about just over 4 million grant and just over 3 million of supported borrowing. At the moment, there's no further indication of money for the future, so we've assumed that that's going to be flatlined. As I said, we've got the provisional capital settlement, the initial capital programme, and so these proposals will now be submitted to scrutiny committees for consultation and review. And the bids that have been put forward for funding are detailed in Appendix 3 of the report. I think what's quite important as well is the report also details the funding sources for these bids, so that some of it we get from reserves, some of it we get from Welsh Government, some from Section 106, from planning, etc. And some of it we have had to borrow to be able to fund it. But those programmes are really quite important. So funding for the bids in relation to Barry Island lighting, Central Promenade Cafe and T-Devon lift have been found and approved within the Course 2 Capital Monitoring Report for this year. And a capital bid was also submitted in relation to redevelopment of Surrey Primary School. And we will be looking to move that forward. And there's also in Appendix 1 various allocations for asset renewal over the 5-year programme, and it's requested that the £2 million education asset renewal is allocated, set out in Appendix 1 to the report. So despite the limited amount of funding that the capital that the council has, I think it's fair to say we still have a hugely ambitious programme. But one thing that you will see if you went back to the revenue budget is that we need to build capacity in some areas, particularly things like project management, to be able to deliver these programmes. We've had quite a remarkable performance in this area, but we do need to strengthen that to continue to deliver that. Within the report, it's been requested to reprofile the housing improvement programme in line with the business plan that was approved by council on the 12th of January. So there's that thing as well. As I mentioned, scrutiny are going to be asked to review the draft capital programme and make any comments to Cabinet by the 26th of February. So that's alongside the revenue budget that we've just discovered. Managers will also be asked to revisit recommended schemes contained in the draft final proposals, so that this all comes together when it comes back to us on the 26th of February before going to full council. So as with the revenue report, the approved timetable requires Cabinet to approve the final budget proposals by the 26th of February, and then the capital programme proposals will go to council on the 9th of March to enable council tax to be set by the 11th of March. So for us today, there are 4 recommendations. Firstly, that Cabinet reviews the draft capital programme for 2026-27 to 2030-31 and submits the programme for consultation to Performance Joint Scrutiny Committee. That Cabinet refers this report and appendices to a Performance Joint Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 11th of February 2026 for their consideration and debate, with any recommendations being referred back to Cabinet on the 26th of February 2025. I won't put the thing in about if there are no comments, because there will be comments. There will be lots of comments, and that will be good. Recommendation 3, that subject to recommendations 1 and 2, the reprofile of the housing improvement programme in line with the housing business plan is approved, as set out in paragraph 2.30 of this report. And finally, that Cabinet approves that the £2 million education asset renewal budget is allocated as set out in Appendix 1. And I think it's worth noting that the asset renewal programme, which is to do with maintenance and upgrade, is separate and additional to the school building programme, the Sustainable Communities for Schools. So I'm happy to move that.
And I'll formally second this.
Thank you. And I can't see that we have any hands up, so that's agreed. Thank you. So I shall move on now to agenda item 5. I can just move all my papers around. And this is an update on work being undertaken to tackle poverty and the cost of living crisis. And this is an action to prevent and tackle poverty. The report relates to the period from April 2025 to September 2025, and it actually illustrates the huge breadth of work being undertaken to support people into employment, help families and young people with financial and well-being support, including various sports opportunities, developing work within schools to use them as community hubs, tackling food insecurity, and also how we use the cost of living reserve. Now, I've highlighted lots in this report, so I won't go into it all, but I think it's fair to say that our data tells us that there are issues of poverty and deprivation across the Vale of Glamorgan. The cost of living is continuing to cause hardship. And in 2019, there were 3 lower super output areas, or LSOAs, in the Vale of Glamorgan, ranked in the top 10% most deprived area in Wales. In November 2025, Welsh Government released the latest Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, and that now shows that 7 LSOAs are ranked in the top 10%. Predominantly, those LSOAs are located in Barry, but I think that there are further 4 LSOAs that are in the next category, 10 to 20% as well. And it's also quite interesting that if you take the different factors of deprivation, that there are some areas that you would not expect to be deprived that come out very high in Wales for one particular area. So these are all things that we have to look at. So we're currently analysing the index, and we will be briefing members in January, well, about a fortnight's time, I think. Since March 2022, there has been a consistent month-on-month increase in the total number of people in receipt of universal credit. And while it fits in with a move from legacy benefits to universal credit, it also reflects a consistent growth in recipients. And it's worth noting that 7.9% of the total number of people, 4,780 recipients in the Vale of Glamorgan are currently in employment. So there are challenges there, and inflation over that period. I mean, we've moved away from that a bit, but actually in October 2022, that's not that long ago, inflation hit 11.1%. So people in the Vale have been coping with high levels of inflation. It's coming down now, it's good, but there is a legacy to that. Paragraph 2.5 is worth reading because that is some stuff around the Trussell Trust end of year statistics. But then if we go through the report, it talks about why Vale 2030 is as it is, and why we have an emphasis on tackling poverty. It also talks, in terms of that, is about increasing the supply of good quality, accessible and affordable housing. And that's, to prevent homelessness and provide housing options. It talks about the Welsh Benefits Charter and the aims for the Welsh benefit system. But it's also talks in paragraph 2.12 about the processes that we've got to make accessing support much easier, so that if somebody contacts us for one level of support, we actually are able to say, well, have you thought about this? There may be something else that you're able to help. And funnily enough, we've only been discussing this week about how we make financial support for carers much more visible on our web services, etc. Talks about us now being a real living wage accredited employer. And I hope that has an impact in terms of number of people that have to be on universal credit through being low waged, as that spreads throughout the county. Talks about support with housing, employment. Our Communities for Work Plus team work with people to either get them into training or employment, or give them advice and training and support as they search for employment. The access to services, advice and support, we discussed that when we were talking about housing revenue account and the support that we provide for people. And there's also a pilot. If you look at paragraph 2.23, it's really interesting. A pilot for outbound wellbeing calls is being developed in partnership with the Central Vale GP cluster. So actually they will contact priority patients to check on them and see that all is okay. And if that works, that could be something really, really interesting for the future. I think it goes on, it talks about the Your Place project in some of our most deprived areas, actually finding out exactly what it is that that will help people. And then paragraph 2.31 talks about transport. And as I said earlier, is it fair that we have people in some parts of Vale that literally could be getting buses every 10-15 minutes, and people in other parts of the Vale that only have access to either a bus or a train once an hour? If you miss that, you're pretty well stranded, aren't you? So that we want to do something on that. It goes on in terms of warm spaces, fuel poverty, families. It is incredibly comprehensive. Talks about the 60+ golden pass in our leisure services that helps to get people active and provides free services. The stuff that's going on in our libraries is absolutely amazing. That's on paragraph 2.56 for a couple. And hopefully when with the new work in the Pride in Place schemes, the plan for neighbourhoods, there will be more work going on there. So even though it hasn't been a huge amount of money, working with partners out in our communities, working in people that will support things like warm hubs and that sort of thing, sports clubs that welcome people in, other sorts of activities being run by the voluntary sector, there is a stunning amount of work going on to support people. I'm just thinking, I can see, before I go to I'll go to recommendations because I think you'll be doing that, but there's 3 recommendations that Cabinet consider the work being undertaken with regards to tackling poverty and the cost of living crisis as part of the delivery of Vale 2030. Secondly, that Cabinet approve the proposals for progressing a response to the latest data released as part of the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, and receive a further report on this and the Council's overall work to tackle poverty and the cost of living crisis in 6 months. And finally, that Cabinet notes the use of the cost of living reserve to support those in needs. And I'll move that, but I'll also ask Councillor Wilson to come in because he's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. And I think this is a very impressive report and just shows you how much work the Vale Council and our partners in the third sector and also in the private sector are working with us on this as well. And I give you a good example, which is touches upon my area in building services, is 2.40. When we're talking about the Eco4 Flex scheme, I think this is an example where perhaps we can try and reduce the cost of electricity and gas bills in people's homes by making sure that there is proper heating improvements and insulation to be installed. And I think that is important. There's two criteria here, although but it's an or in the middle. So you have an income below 31,000, or you have someone in the home has a qualified medical condition, they could be eligible for the scheme. And I mean, the expectation that the scheme will continue up until the end of this calendar year as well. So I won't stop people applying. I think it's important that people do apply if they think they're eligible, and that will help them. Not only that, it will make their house more marketable as well in the future as well. And I think this is clearly, we can help people out who are homeowners, or perhaps even help some landlords possibly. But clearly, it's not just council houses that benefit, as we noted in council recently, but also and scrutiny, but also it will mean that people in the private sector will also benefit if they're eligible. And that's another example. And I think 2.47 onwards on social activities, all the way down to 2.56. But even I didn't realise that actually children can actually get sports equipment from their libraries on a loan basis. And isn't that fantastic? Because most people think of libraries as getting books out, but I know we can get iPads out, but now we've extended to things like sports equipment. And isn't that great? Because people can participate in different sports and that won't be a barrier. So I think this is really good report and I'm happy to endorse it.
By endorse, do you mean second?
Yes.
Brill, thank you. So, did you want to come in? Yeah, sorry.
No.
No. So, Councillor, we've got Councillor Perks got his hand up in the chamber, and I know Councillor Gwyn will come in afterwards. So, over to Councillor Perks first.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to, sort of obviously around my portfolio of the council housing stuff, the sort of the things that we've mentioned previously, and I mentioned in full council on Monday, was the money advice support that housing tenants can get, and there's about 500,000 money that's been claimed on their behalf because they had that support from our money advice service. And I just think as we all know, in Cabinet and our fellow councillors, having a decent home to actually live in sort of supports, sort of ongoing, with life and sort of skills and life attainment as well. So if you've got that secure home that's decent, warm, and, sort of is secure, it helps with addressing other barriers then, because you haven't got that main worry of having a secure home. And I think that's something that the council is doing really well with, and the programme that we have over the next 10 years and the 30-year programme that we have as well for building homes. And I think this is a very holistic report that addresses lots of the different things that our residents, sort of experience within the Vale. And we want to ensure that everybody has the life chances that the people, sort of on different demographic sort of areas have. So, yes, I'm really happy with this report and what it says about, the housing side of things as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know what happened there because before I bring Gwyn in, I turned my camera off, but you was talking, but it was showing me. So there might be some confusion when we get to the live stream. But it was Councillor Perks that was talking on that.
You said everything about moving your lips. Yeah.
I did, yes, and I also need to say that in terms of Councillor Wilson's comments about libraries, you can also go there and become a Guinness World Record holder, can't you, in our libraries? So there we are. So all sorts of things you can do. Councillor John has been waiting patiently while I ramble. So over to you, Gwyn.
Thank you, Leader. Just briefly, this report is a superb report, well written, and the authors must be congratulated. It's a lot of bad news in here, obviously, but it opens our eyes as to how the public out there are suffering hardship. And for example, September 2025, there was over 15,000 people in receipt of universal credit. And of those, there was over 10,240 unemployed. Quite honestly, when you read through this report, all the data it gives us is quite startling. And I will mention that today the Welsh Government have announced free use, now a restricted number, but there are free use of some people can use leisure services, which is good news, which they're supporting, because quite honestly, we've got to try and help people more and more to get out of this mess and live their lives as they want to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gwyn. And yeah, I think to be honest, there's so much in this report. I mean, as members, we get a regular economic update for the Vale of Glamorgan. So a lot of the data in terms of numbers of unemployed and inflation and all that sort of thing is there. But when you pull it all together in terms of what's available, then I think all credit to our team who have been working very, very hard to make sure that people get the support they need. And what I would say is, if anyone's in any doubt of what's available, it's worth a trip out and pop into the pod at the end of Holton Road by and underneath Golau Caredig, because they have a whole range of people there that can tackle employment, benefits, support, that sort of stuff, and provide and a cup of tea at the same time. So it's worthwhile contacting them and seeing what support is available. So as I said, I moved those recommendations. No, I didn't. Yes, I moved those recommendations. Councillor, thank you for the reminder. Councillor Wilson seconded them. I think everyone else is trying to second them as well, and everyone is in agreement. So that's agreed. I think it's probably best if I stay quiet now and I hand over to Councillor Birch for agenda item 6, which is in relation to new delivery models for enhanced and sustainable specialist provision. Please enlighten us, Rhiannon.
Thank you. So this report is looking at putting out a consultation. That we've put out a consultation on a proposal to create new delivery models for enhanced and sustainable specialist provision. So there was a consultation period. It finished last October, and consultees were asked to indicate whether they support, do not support, or have no opinion on the proposals. 2 respondents indicated they supported the consultation and 2 objected. There's a very large appendix here which includes the summary of key themes and issues that were raised during this exercise, and is summarised in the report as well, obviously. So we now need to think about whether we want to progress the proposals on to the next stage with the publication of a statutory notice. I mean, I'd like to offer some background on this. So last July, we authorised the department to undertake a consultation with a proposal to create new delivery models for enhanced sustainable specialist provision. We will all know that there's been an enormous growth in additional learning needs, and additional learning needs has expanded to cover a variety of different difficulties that children may be experiencing. And so the remit has widened and the demand has gone up. And you'll all know about COVID and how many difficulties that adults, children alike, many found it very, very difficult. And we're still working through children who did not have appropriate socialisation and introduction to school at the right time because of lockdown during COVID. So anyway, so we've talked about this exponential growth. There's a need to consolidate support, to widen access to specialist support, trainings and interventions across all of our schools. The answer is not to put children into very narrow specialist provision, but to keep as many children as possible within the mainstream, with additional help being offered within the mainstream, so that children are being educated alongside and with other children rather than in parallel, which can happen when children go into a kind of much more narrow specialist provision. Obviously, for some children, this is going to be the only option that's going to be really suitable for them. But there are other children who remaining in the mainstream would be as viable as possible to make sure that they can relate to their contemporaries and peers. So there are two parts of the consultation: to establish a new English medium specialist resource base at Holton Primary, which would take effect from the beginning of this year or as soon as possible thereafter. There is a pilot provision that's going on there at the moment. And to introduce an expanded model of the local authorities engagement service, which is currently being delivered by Ysgol Derry, which, as you will know, has several offshoots now. Very appropriate, bearing in mind the tree analogy, which will be piloted in the autumn term, last term, in order for us to be able to make proper decisions on how it works in practice. This would mean a change to the existing provision currently provided at Abont. This is a resource base currently situated at High Street Primary. This base acts as a centre of excellence for behavioural, emotional and social difficulties, what we now call BESD, and provides a stimulating, rich environment and specialist staff to cater for children with SEMH needs on a full-time basis. Places are offered on a full-time basis with dual registration at their home school. I've talked before about children having specialist help and then being reintroduced to their home school so that they can be educated with their peers. Places are, and the base offers a revolving door, and the expectation is that following a period of intervention and specialist support, pupils will be able to be reintegrated into mainstream education. And this is what's happening with special units across the county. So if there is an identified growth in ALN across all of our schools, in 2023, there were 107 pupils in Welsh medium primary schools identified as having SEN ALN. That had risen from 88 in 2022, and it has now gone up to 1,251 in 2023. And a clear increase in children and young people being identified as having issues relating to their mental health, emotional and social development. So these resource bases would provide periods of integrated provision for pupils with social, emotional and emotional health to improve sustainabilities of our services for all of our pupils. So if we look at the recommendations, first, the Cabinet notes and approves the consultation report, which is in Appendix A. The consultation report, Appendix B, and other appendices are included as part of the report, including a community impact assessment and a quality impact assessment. These are C and D. As required under paragraph 3.6 of the School Organisation Code 2018, create new delivery models for enhanced and sustainable specialist provision. And 2, the Cabinet agrees to proceed to the next statutory stage of the proposal to create new delivery models for enhanced and sustainable specialist provision in accordance with the School Standards and Organisation Wales Act 2013 and the Statutory Code. I'd like to move those recommendations.
Thanks, Rhiannon. I'm delighted to second those, and I think many will know I popped into the new facilities at the resource base in St Cyrus. And I mean, we've all known St Cyrus as being an amazingly inclusive and supportive school, but the stuff that's happening in that resource base is brilliant. And I had the opportunity to talk to the young people that were attending, and I can just pass on my thanks to them because they were absolutely brilliant, really sparky, and with very strongly held views, which I was fully given. But hopefully I'll see them again soon. But no, totally happy with seconding this, and it has my full support. I can't see any other hands up or what. Everybody's in support, so that's agreed. And we can go on to agenda item 7. This is the Connect to Work regional programme. That's back to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you. So to offer some background on this, the Get Britain Working white paper was published in November 24. It outlines the UK government's strategy to tackle rising economic inactivity and reform employment support systems. It sets out the ambition to reverse declining employment rates, a direct response to a rise in economic inactivity, specifically in relation to long-term sickness and health-related barriers to employment. So the Connect to Work programme marks the initial phase of a wider series of employment initiatives under the UK government's Get Britain Working strategy. And as part of its long-term reform agenda to transform employment support the government is encouraging collaboration across sectors. The Vale's employment services are keen to engage and contribute to emerging initiatives aligned with this strategy. So the white paper is structured around three main pillars: modern industrial strategy and local growth plans, creating more employment opportunities across the UK, improving job quality and security, and transforming employment support systems. The broader work of the Get Britain Working Plan and Connect to Work will also support greater integration between local health, skills and employment services, which align to the government's strategic plans around neighbourhood interventions and place-based control over local services. Both the Work and Health Programme and the Shared Prosperity Funded Supported Employment Programme, CELT Plus, are scheduled to conclude in 26, so this year, and the Connect to Work programme has been designed to address the ongoing needs of this cohort, offering tailored support to individuals who are not able to access mainstream services, and complement existing employment provision by bridging gaps and ensuring continued support for those with more complex barriers to work. There is a tremendous amount of detail in this report about the kind of intensive support that's going to be offered to people, tailored support, putting people into places where they can train, where they can do work experience. It looks in particular at people who have, complex difficulties such as disabilities, long-term health problems, whether we're talking about the neurodivergent or those who may have drug and alcohol dependency, people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, because there is no one-size-fits-all for getting people into work. Different approaches have to be adopted in order to make sure that everybody is encouraged and supported into their path to employment. I'm particularly pleased to look at young people with care experience. They no longer have to leave at 18, but many of them will need support for some years in order to get them onto the path of adulthood. Refugees, obviously a particular topic for the Vale, because we have taken on people from various parts of the world. Former armed forces personnel. This is part of the pact that we've made with service people to ensure that their children get into schools where they need to, that they're offered employment when they come out of the forces. And victims of modern slavery, a problem that has arisen particularly in the last few years, or been recognised as a problem in the last few years. There's all sorts of different ways of supporting people into employment. So the report seems to inform Cabinet of the local and regional plans and requests approval to enter into a legal agreement and contract between all 10 South East Wales local authorities with Cardiff Council, assuming the role of main grant recipient body on our behalf. Creation of a grant recipient body would act as the central team overseeing the implementation and management of the Connect to Work programme across the region. Also, recommends that employed project staff required to undertake the Connect to Work project sit as part of the Communities for Work Plus employability team within the Learning and Skills Directorate. And last, the report seeks delegated authority to the Director of Learning and Skills to take forward this work in consultation with the Director of Corporate Resources, Head of Finance, Section 151 Officer, the Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, and Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and the Welsh Language. So the recommendations, to paraphrase, are Cabinet be provided with an overview of the Connect to Work programme, approval be granted for the Learning and Skills Employability team to enter into this regional agreement, approval be sought to work with Cardiff Council as the grant recipient body, approval be granted for the Connect to Work team to sit within Learning and Skills, and that delegated authority be granted to the Director of Learning and Skills and all of the people I just mentioned, and that we enter into the legal documentation to enable the Vale of Glamorgan to enter into legal agreement through a back-to-back contract, SLA or MOU with Cardiff to progress this work. And I'd like to move those recommendations, please.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Happy to second that, and good that the work will continue. I know that Kelp Plus has been hugely successful in the Vale, so it would be good if those services continue in some form or even enhanced. So Nobody else wishes to speak. Everybody's in agreement, so that's passed. So the next agenda item 8, is one for Councillor Wilson, the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood and Building Services, and it relates to revised street scheme strategy for 2026 to 2031. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction, Leader. I mean, this is a very exciting report, and I'd just like to say that it's basically two parts of this. And the first part is really about soft plastics. Now, as you know, there's been a pilot of soft plastics going on recently in Penarth, and it's been very, very successful. And I'm pleased to say that in this report, there are plans to expand that provision of soft plastic collection to everyone in the Vale Glamorgan. So every household in the Vale Glamorgan will get that option of using soft plastics in a blue plastic bag, which will go into the blue Hessian bag. It's been amazingly successful in Penarth, so much so that people think soft plastics do not weigh much. But in reality, we're collecting almost 3 tons every week. And that's incredible, really, because people think soft plastics doesn't weigh, yet we're collecting 3 tons a week. And hopefully we'll collect a lot more now. And that will obviously reduce, hopefully, the amount of residual waste, because as you know, in other parts of the Vale, some of it is ending up in black bags. Admittedly, some people do send it to their supermarkets, but they won't need to travel to their supermarkets. They will then go and just do it on the curbside, along with their other recycling. So we expand the opportunities, and as we, already at the moment in Barry, we've got another pilot going on concerning textiles, and I heard that's going very well as well. But the other bit of the report is the main thrust, okay? And this is about improving our street scene. Now, obviously, this is a big issue, and thanks to money from what we call the extended producer with responsibility funding, which we received something like £3.8 million. We are now in a great position now to expand and improve and enhance what we collect in our town centres and hopefully improve our public realm with our town centres. And we considered 3 options here, and this is outlined on paragraph 2.15 on page 6 of the report. The first one, we looked at option 1, which is obviously a budget limiting model. Now, as I said earlier, and I know the leader said earlier on, that really this is a budget we've received, which is above inflation, which has meant that we can expand and enhance our services, and that's what we hope to do. And clearly, this is not really an option that we would consider. We're not in a position where we want to reduce staff and service levels. We don't just want to focus largely on our statutory duties, and we don't want to lead to a situation of deterioration in environmental quality. So we consider that not to be a valid choice at this time, fortunately. Option 2 was one of moderate investment. And that would be slightly above the current budget, but that retains many services, but it doesn't address core issues such as inconsistent cleaning frequencies, and that would be considered insufficient to meet public's expectations. Because obviously the public look and see every day what goes on in our cleansing. Most of our public go to our town centres, and clearly we thought that that wasn't ambitious enough. So we're now going to the preferred option, which is option 3, which we consider to be transformational. And that's based on an investment-led approach, and that would mean an additional £1 million funding alongside realigned budgets, and that's from our extended producer responsibility payments. And that will establish dedicated street scene teams that will go in our towns and our bigger villages as well to go around and to clean them, and we'll have dedicated street sweepers and place-based street scene teams. They will be proactive and reactive as well. So obviously we expect that if they got an issue, they don't wait for a member of the public to point them out. They will see it and they will clean it and get rid of the issue there and then. And also, they will be using in-cab technology and using QR codes, so they'll be very receptive and quick to manage this performance. So we expect a much more quicker turnaround than we've had previously. We also expect increased cleaning frequencies for gateways and town centres. So as you see, one of the issues that sometimes we see is signs not being very cleansed. Now, my expectation as the relevant cabinet member is that these signs will be cleaned much more frequently. But also people have pointed out, and I pointed out, it's not just the signs to be cleaned out, it also means any growth around it. And as we know, we are starting to get to the growing season, even in January now, that we tackle that as well, because no point having clean signs if people can't visually see them. So it's important that we do that. And not only that, we also got in many of our towns public conveniences, and it's important that they are cleaned not just once a day, but 3 times a day. And that is our aim to do that. And that will ensure greater cleanliness within our public conveniences. We also want the public to report things, not just via the contact centre, but also through digital reporting tools such as QR codes as well, because many phones now have that capacity to do that without necessarily downloading a QR app. And that will enable a rapid response. Now, as part of option 3, we also want to focus on our community and our partners. And that's important because the council can't do this in isolation. I like to emphasise that. You know, producer responsibility, okay, is about making sure the producers don't generate so much plastics and whatever, but also it's our responsibility to work with our partners, and especially including our town and community councils. And we want to inform them as much as possible, but we also want them to inform us as well. So I want to emphasise it's very much a partnership approach. We also work very well with Keats Wells Tidy, and we want to enhance that because that's a very good source of volunteers. We know they do fantastic work in our communities, and we want to continue that. There are also many local cleaning groups throughout the Vale Glamorgan, and we want to enhance that, and we want to give them the accreditation that they deserve. We also want to develop some new initiatives as well called Adopt a Street. Now, many people are very proud of where they live, and we want that to continue. So we like people in their towns to adopt their street, to feel that they really could contribute to cleaning up, because we know that sometimes that even with our fantastic collectors of waste and recycling, there's some things, especially if we have windy weather and everything, if we see some crisp packets loose or whatever, let's pick it up. Don't wait to get someone to do that. Let's pick it up ourselves very quickly. You can go to many of our libraries to pick up litter equipment, so you can pick it up in a safe and hygienic way to yourself. But also, I think this will enhance civic pride as well. And I think that is so important because many of us are very proud of our towns. Let's face it, the Vale Glamorgan is a stunning place to live, and we want to continue that. But it's about, what I would like to emphasise, this is a 5-year plan. It's about a shared responsibility, not just with the council, but also our local communities. It becomes everyone's responsibility because everyone is very much concerned about the environment which they are in. The third dimension to this is sustainability and placemaking. And I think this is very important as well. So what we've got to think about here is that we live in an era, as we know, of climate change. And I know that myself, looking at even flowers now, which are flowering in January, like daffodils, for example, almost unprecedented. But we know we live in this period, but we will contribute to fight climate change, okay, by investing in things such as electric vehicles and sustainable technology. And this will reduce our carbon footprint. And this will be very much part of this strategy. We also very much support Project Zero ambitions as well. And we also want to enhance the community of place and community well-being. Well, I would also like to emphasise that in particular areas, especially in Barry, there will be fly tipping vehicles. And because we've had many concerns about some of the back lanes in Barry, in the middle of Barry, and we really want to make sure that those vehicles can adapt and go into those back lanes and clear them out on a frequent basis. And that is really, really important. This report, I'm pleased to tell you all, will be going to scrutiny as well, because this report is very detailed. I've only provided you a brief summary of what's been going on in this report. So I'm going to go now to the recommendations. Recommendation 1, that Cabinet notes the reimbursement of £3.8 million from PAC UK. So PAC UK is the administrator for the EPR money for this financial year for managing packaging rates in 2021 food extension producer scheme. I think that's a little typo there. Number 2, that Cabinet agrees in principle to rebranding of street cleansing, replacing it with a new modern street scene that will focus on engagement and seek to increase community involvement and participation. That Cabinet agrees in principle the allocation of extended producer funding for 25-26 and 26-27 as detailed in reports. The Cabinet agrees in principle to amend the Neighbourhood Services Revenue Budget for 25-26 and 26-27 as detailed in the report. The Cabinet agrees in principle to repurpose and create the posts identified within this report. And as a result, we'll have an increase in staff to manage this, which I think is very important. That Cabinet agrees to roll out weekly curbside collection of soft plastics, utilising EPR funding across the Vale Glamorgan on a permanent basis from the 13th of April 2026. That the use of the Cabinet urgent decision procedure as outlined at section 15.14 of the Cabinet's Constitution be agreed for a recommendation of recommend 6 of this report. That will mean that the soft plastics, because it's already been agreed before, that it will not go to scrutiny for their consideration. There's no need, but the rest of the recommendations will do so. That this report is referred to a place scrutiny committee for consideration. And final recommendation, that in view of no recommendation being received from the above committee, recommendations 1 and 5 be agreed, and I so move.
Thanks, Mark. I've got Councillor Brooks that wants to come in first, and then Councillor John.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Really, really exciting initiative there, and I think it's really interesting about all the various initiatives in there, and I think it fits very much into those placemaking plans, and obviously for the 4 towns as well, and elsewhere, how it all fits very, very well into that. And as well as, again, about the place plans, how they're working with the town and community councils, and this will, be an integral part of that as well. So it's really fantastic to see all of that. And it's just, you talked about Keep Wales Tidy, but working closely with them. And obviously at Barry Town Council as well, we've actually got we're a litter picking hub. So we're working very well and with Keep Wales Tidy as that initiative. So that it sort of all fits in and gloves in very, very nicely. So I'm really excited to see all of this come about.
And I'd also thank you very much for your comments.
And I'd like to sort of second your recommendations as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks, and thank you very much for your endorsement. The other point I was going to make is this report. This is not just focused on the 4 towns. We also have a floating vehicle that will go into the main village centres as well. And I think it's important to emphasise that. So it's the main areas of the Vale will be touched upon this. There'll be no change to the residential areas in terms of their collections or whatever, but obviously the Adopt Street initiatives will help in that aspect as well.
Thanks both. It's over now to Councillor John.
Thank you, Leader. Well, Mark, you stole the show today, I think, because this is a wonderful report. And I'm sure people across the Vale will be delighted. I know they will in Lantford Major, because we've suffered from problems for a long time with the litter around the streets, particularly on weekends, but also the weeds. Some weeds were 3 foot high in the town centre. And this initiative today gives us great hope for the future. Certainly the street signs, again, covered with trees and very dirty as a result. So the gateway to towns, you know, it's going to be a pleasure to come to the Vale of Glamorgan in future, because we've set the scene. And well done, Mark. This is great news, and I welcome it. Thank you.
Can I say thank you very much? And what I know that Clanwick Major has been suffering recently because you don't necessarily have a dedicated street sweeper. I'm delighted to say that will be coming back. I think that'd be really important. But obviously, I don't want weeds that high, nor am I keen on little weeds as well. So I think it's important that we do tackle that. And if people do see that as an issue, please report it on our new technology and our existing technology.
Thanks all. Just one comment, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. The amount of funding we got through the extended producer responsibility funding, in part, is a result of the amazing performance and contribution by Vale residents. That, you know, we are one of the top performing councils in terms of recycling, and that has actually translated into financial support, and that's on top of the money that we're able to get through being able to sell clean recycling. So it is one of those things that we need to say thank you to Vale residents, and it's also nice to say this is the impact it can have. We can't say that we'll always have this funding, but it's good to give us a head start on the stuff we want to do.
I think so, and I think I like to thank the officers and the operatives who work so hard, and we often see them at least once a week in many cases, and we often see them in our town centres working hard already, and they'll be working even smarter this time, and I think that's the important bit here. And I'm absolutely delighted. Our recycling performance, I believe, will be over 70%. And I know it's not officially published yet, but when it does, I'm sure we'll be celebrating that fact. And clearly, you know, this is a way forward. But as I will echo what the leader has said, it's down to the residents of the Vale of Glamorgan. They have worked so hard on our behalf. And I know for many, many people, they spend quite a bit of their time caring very much about what things goes in which bag, and we really appreciate that, and we like that to continue.
Thank you. Yes, I don't get anything wrong. My husband will certainly take me to task. But anyway, no dissent on that. We're all really delighted with that report. And as Gwyn has said, it's the best report. So we've downgraded the budget. And we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that is agenda item 9, which is another one for you, Mark, and I'm not going to read it all out, but it's basically to do with the 20-mile-an-hour default speed limit. So
That's
back over
right.
to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this report is on the 20 miles per hour review. Now, as you know, over a year ago, we introduced 20 miles per hour. And obviously, in some areas, not so much in the Vale of Glamorgan, there was a bit of fuss about 20 miles per hour and whether it will be sustainable in the future and whether it will really work. But the evidence indicates that actually it resulted in less accidents, it resulted in less deaths, and it resulted in less injuries. And I think, and ultimately, it's saved the NHS money as well. And I think ultimately, most people, I know from the volumes of emails I've had more emails saying we want more 20 miles per hour than less. Even when I've been electioneering, as I have done, I'm not getting many people on the door saying to me that I like going back to 30 miles per hour. I know not everyone shares that view, but what I can only see what I can see. And really, this report is looking at TROs. Now, as you know, when we have a legal process when we change a speed limit and we have to go out to consultation with the public. And I think that is very important that we do that. And also it's very important that we do take on their responses and we look at their responses as well. So what I'm going to do now is not going to go through those responses because clearly there's a huge amount of responses detailed in this report. And if people want to look at it, they're more than welcome to do so by reading the depth of this report. But I will go to is the main summary here. And we had responsive of 228 contacts received over this consultation. And obviously, 103 roads was classified subject to review. Under 95 of these roads were reviewed for possible change to 20 to 30, and 8 roads which requested change from 30 to 20. Alongside the National Listening Programme, the Welsh Cabinet Member for Secretary in Economy and Transport announced plans to jointly work with local authorities to prepare the ground for changes, revising the scheme on which roads could be exempt from 20. The revised guidance was published in July 2024. And this follows from this revised guidance. The documents intend to replace the previous exceptions criteria. So obviously we looked at the criteria and it changed. So of the 95 roads reviewed under the revised guidance, the assessment concluded that 4 roads would change from 20 to 30 miles per hour and 3 would change from 30 to 20. So the proposed roads to increase from 20 to 30 were Hayes Road to 40 miles per hour in Surrey, Pedroede in Roos in part, Claret Major Road between the B470 and Westgate Cowbridge, Cardiff Road A422 Primrose Hill in Cowbridge. We also proposed some roads to go from 30 to 20. Leckwith Road in Landock, which is Cannon Walk to the 40 miles per hour limit, the B4524 Main Road in Ogmore, Hazelwood to Northern extent of the village, and the B4267 Lavenot Road, Penarth, which is from Augusta Road to Brockhill Wise. Now, obviously, we did consultations on those TROs. And from those consultations, we agreed to endorse Hayes Road. We agreed to endorse Pedroede. We agreed to endorse Cardiff Road. But we are a listening council, and we agreed to take on the objections to Claret Major Road between the B4270 and Westgate Cowbridge to remain at 20 miles per hour. So as a result, there will be 3 roads that will go to 30 miles per hour instead of the proposed 4. And of the 3 roads from 30 to 20, the officers felt that despite some objections and some support, the officers felt, and I felt as a cabinet member, that these changes were sustainable and that they were proposed to move from 30 to 20. And these were obviously Leckwith Road, as I mentioned, the main road in Ogmore, and Lavenot Road in Penarth, as I mentioned, between Augusta Road to Brockhill Rise. So can I thank the residents for contributing towards that? Because clearly it made officers think. It made us make a change in one of our initial proposals for this. And I'm now going to go to the recommendations. And there are 3 of those: that the Cabinet considers and accepts your objections to the proposal for Claret Major Road, Cowbridge, for the reasons stated in this report; that Cabinet, having considered all major objections as outlined in this report, determines they do not want amendment and approves the proposed change to the traffic road order to enable the changes to the speed limits to be implemented, and the objectors are advised to the decisions, and I so move.
Thanks, Mark, and I'm happy to second. It's actually quite interesting because I know some people were on sort of roads with national speed limit and wanted them reduced, and it was a shame because they were very valid, but it was outside the scope of the report. But I think these are a very sensible adjustments. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, happy to second, and I can see other people nodding around here, and we're all happy to agree. Thank you. So the final report for today is one for the Cabinet Member social care and health, and it relates to the governance arrangements. I don't know what's happened there. For the National Adoption and Fostering Service. Over to you, Eddie.
Hello, Leader. Thank you for that. I'm hoping you can hear me. Right. It has been commented, and I've got the longest title for a report, but basically, in short, it's about the Quoracy of the National Joint Committee for the National Adoption Service for Wales and Foster Wales. You can see from the report that all Welsh local authorities agreed to a joint committee and signed a joint committee legal agreement that facilitates that. And the inaugural meeting of the joint committee occurred in April 2024. But unfortunately, since then, only one of the 3 planned meetings has been able to proceed because of the meeting has not been quorate. A process has been undertaken to consult on reducing the quoracy, and this has resulted in a joint committee recommending that the quorum should reduce from 60% of the voting council members, 1 per local authority, to 40%, where that includes at least 3 of the regional areas. And to action this recommendation, each local authority has to make a formal decision at Cabinet, and if in agreement, sign a deed of variation. It's one of those things you think, joint committee, national, and I don't think that people realise that when we have particular services that we provide, there are different levels that we commit to. And, we'd recognise within the Vale of Glamorgan, we've got our adoption and fostering services, but we've got a collaboration with Vale, it's called the Vale Valleys and Cardiff collaboration. So as a region, we join together and provide the services, and this helps us to share the load as far as adoption and fostering. As part of that, Wales, being as it is separated into 5 regional areas. So that was quite important as part of discussing this agreement, making sure that there were sufficient regions as part of this, any decisions that are going to be made for a national basis. So it's been difficult to try and get all the members from the 22 authorities to attend at the same time. And the recognition that we've all got quite busy portfolios. So with discussion with the legal department, they're recognising that if we at least got 3 regionals and a representation from the other councils, then we can move forward. So the report sort of gives quite some detail. I'd like to say the benefits of it. One of the aspects of it is the governance of the funding, and it's quite important that we see some good work that's been done. And if you look at the reports from the National Adoption Service and the fostering, you'll note that there's been an increase on the adoption support that's required. So people think, oh, there's less adoptions, but the reality is, whilst we are keeping those in need with their families, there is still a need for the adoption service. But as understood, it's fostering is a key element of that. So the report gives an overview of that. So I'll just go to the recommendations. That the quorum in the Joint Committee be reduced to 40%, with at least 3 regional areas represented. The delegated authority be granted to the Monitor Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, to enter into the deed of variation on behalf of the Council to enable this. It's important that we as a Council agree to this so that we can be part of that legal process as far as the deed agreement. I so move.
Thanks, Eddie. That's fine. I'll second that. Good so that we can get things working more effectively. Can't see any dissent from any other cabinet member, so that's agreed. I don't have any urgent items under part 1, and I don't have any items under part 2. So it just leaves me to close the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance for some very complicated reports. Thank you.